One thing I can say about this week is it's not particularly difficult, but it's also not particularly easy. You know where to apply pressure and where to ease up. We're going to get a Sun-Saturn crash point every single month for the next 2.5 years. I'm not talking politics. I'm talking astrology and how it affects the world. If you don't know that, Google six fingers and the prime minister's name of the nation of Ai in the Middle East. In this week ahead, we're going to see a Mars activation of the point of the eclipse that we had in September. Yes, on September 7th, there was a lunar eclipse in Pisces at 15 degrees, and fated and destined turning points in things that had initiated in the world and in your life in September of 2025 are coming back for part two. And when I say part two, I mean you're going to take action and make destined fated decision point turnings because Mars is visible. Mars is at the eclipse point, and Mars is saying, go this way. Mars, the god of directionality, motivation, willpower, and choosing, is telling you which way to go. And so you're going to notice that events unfold this week ahead, this week ahead of the 23rd to the 29th of the month of March 2026 that take you back to the past. You're going to feel like you're traveling back to mid-August to the end of September in some fundamental way, but this time you have some mojo going. You know how to go forward. You know where to apply pressure and where to ease up. And you're going to notice that you're also looking more deeply for what you're truly devoted to. And by that, what matters to you? Where do you have a fire in your belly for that person, that job, that place, or that thing? The Vestal flame is heating up the sky where Mars is touching down on the eclipse point and reigniting September stories. And this is something you don't get back for 18 and a half, 20 years. So you got to pay attention to how this week unfolds. It's closing out a Pisces eclipse cycle that began in the fall of 24 and giving you the new direction. Welcome to my channel. Let's get going and let's talk about this week ahead for the world astrology and after the world astrology for your sign. Welcome to the Astrology Report for March the 23rd to the 29th, 2026. We have some interesting stories in our sky this week ahead. The moon is bending the nodes of fate, particularly the North Node at the same time. We have a very intense energy with Pluto involved in a T-square, along with the asteroid Volcanus, Volcano, can lead to something very explosive, and it seems to involve land or earth. And we may actually see an event that therefore connects to earthquakes or weather upsets. As well as this week ahead, we're going to notice how the sun will come into Saturn, crash together for the first time in the sign of Aries for over 30 years. We're going to get a Sun-Saturn crash point every single month for the next 2.5 years, but it's an interesting energy because Sun represents world leaders and politicians, and Saturn represents the Grim Reaper. And this energy is going to be very intense this week ahead as well. So we're going to talk about what that might look for the world, and then we're going to break it down for your sign and what you might want to pay attention to in this week ahead. One thing I can say about this week is it's not particularly difficult, but it's also not particularly easy. It's one of those kinds of weeks where there's flashpoints of surprises, particularly maybe in your commitment to some situation, relationship, job, but there's also this humming underbelly of tension, and it's going to be here all week long. And in world events, we know where that tension is. It's in the Middle East. Now, I am a world astrologer. I talk about world events, but I'm also an all signs astrologer. I'm recording this for you ahead of the curve on March the 19th on a Thursday. That means I don't know what the latest things that will have happened by the time this comes out for you on Monday, but I'm going to do my best to guess about that. I was in a live stream chat today on my premiere for my Thursday drop, and somebody was like, great astrologer, except you had to talk politics. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking politics. I'm talking astrology and how it affects the world. Sometimes astrology affects our weather. Sometimes it affects our politics. Sometimes it affects our economics. So there's a difference between I'm talking politics and I'm talking astrology and how it affects the world. So remember that. Keep that in mind. If you do not like world content, I always timestamp this content for you. My assistant does that. You simply have to jump to your sign. Okay, so there's no big deal, right? Just ignore the first part of the video. All right, just ignore it. I do have a new members only extended section for a lot of my content. So if you are wanting to get me kind of unplugged a bit at the end of every video, I also do outros near the end of every video where I talk about some woo spiritual stuff if I have anything to share, like my latest ghost story. But mostly I try to keep it pretty clean here, not to upset the YouTube demonetization algorithm. Otherwise, I could get demonetized and or deplatformed. I'll be using code words the best I can about world events this week ahead. Welcome. Hi. My name is Lori Lothian. This is the Western Tropical Zodiac Astrology, and I'm using the whole sign house system. And I suggest that for your own benefit, you learn how to cast your chart in whole sign houses. In the description box below, I have my free video tutorial. And the other thing is the more button, ... Everything about me is down there. And some of you might want to find, how to learn astrology with me. Every single fall, I teach my Sky Reader class, usually 6 weeks, but I'm extending it to 8 weeks this fall. Learn how to time your best life and be your own astrologer for intro, beginner level content to learn the basics, but also learn how to use it right away. And I'm teaching my Divine Timing Masterclass in the 5 weekends, Saturdays in the month of May. I haven't set the enrollment card up yet. It's divine timing tools that are ancient, exotic, esoteric, and powerful. How to use astrology to time your life. But it's also really good for those of you who've studied astrology, you're past the beginner phase, and you want to learn some new tools. That will be coming out soon. Check my description box below for how to get on the early bird discount wait list and know when the enrollment card opens. Thank you. All right, guys, I am having a day. I'm recording on Thursday the 19th after an hour and a half nap in the middle of the day. I just saw Stefan Burns talking about Mr. Astro, the weather guy, the space weather guy, about, solar flares getting ready to pummel the earth and like 3 massive blasts. And I don't know, sometimes I think I feel this stuff. Maybe it's just the onset of solar flare malaise. How are you guys doing? Are you hanging in there? Today, the 19th, before I show you the sky and bring you the picture, I did a horary, meaning a divination chart about whether or not the prime minister of the nation of Ai in the Middle East was alive or not. Speculation, deep fake eye, fingers on his hand. If you don't know that, Google 6 fingers and the prime minister's name of the nation of Ai in the Middle East. You know the one, right? I mean, the prime minister of the nation of Ai in terms of the little tiny country that's attacking every other country. And it's so funny because that horary chart suggests that he might be in trouble, but I also see with all the eclipses that he may be in trouble, unalived and stuff like that. Anyway, still ongoing. It's still happening, still in the peril point. But what I wanted to say is that I cast a horary chart on the 12th of the month of March, and accidentally the software, Mercury was retrograde, glitched out and cast the same question for the horary divination astrology question, horary, on March 19th. Today's March 19th, and that particular prime minister with the letter B, ... B, his nickname, showed up at a live press conference showing everyone he was alive. So all those deep fakes, and they were deep fakes of him, AI generated, were probably to make people suspect that he was not alive, almost like a psyop, particularly around giving confidence to the enemies. So we're going to now talk about the sky. We're going to talk about what you can do with the sky and what it might mean for the world. I'm going to show you the chart. I'm going to spin the wheel and talk about each day. And then this is my shortest drop every week. It's usually no longer on average than an hour and 15 minutes. And my girlfriend's chefing up an amazing dinner for me. This is getting dark here, as you can see, in Vancouver, Canada. And I want to definitely not be late for her amazing cooking. So this is Saturday, coming up on March the 21st. And I just want to talk about how it feels to go into the week ahead before we get there. Because on Saturday behind us, behind Monday, you're going to notice that Mars is at 15 degrees of Pisces. You're going to be feeling this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the reason that might be something important is because we had on September 7th, a 15-degree lunar eclipse. And it may recapitulate or bring back, because Mars is acting like a trigger point for that eclipse, themes that occurred in early September. There were many things going on in early September. One of them on September 10th was the unaliving of Charlie Kirk in front of the whole world. There were also other calamitous things going on in the Middle East, especially, I believe, if memory serves me, regarding Lebanon. And all I can say is that look for history to ring a bell of a cycle repetition here. Look for, as you come into Monday, in the rear view mirror, probably Friday, Saturday, Sunday, going, oh my God, that's another iteration of stories that occurred in the first part of September. So we're going to see those stories ring a bell as we enter into the week ahead. In the comments, if you have time to look, what else happened close to September 7th, a week before, a week after? What other stories do you remember in the news cycle? I remember there was definitely something military. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that's what this eclipse is about. But then when Charlie Kirk was unalived, then I thought, oh, and it's also about that. But all things are intertwined. And he was indeed being groomed to probably be a president of the United States before he was deemed unworthy of that position by opposing the agenda of the small little nation in the Middle East that seems to run the world. I had to find a code name for that when I'm not on the members only section. We could, I know a channel who calls that nation Philadelphia. We could call that nation something like, I don't know, Izzy. Okay. The nation of Izzy. We're going to use Izzy as my code word. Anyway, didn't want him necessarily influencing young voters. So he may, the stories, news cycles, and information about that, because Mercury is direct. He's on the North Node at the time of the weekend, and it could indicate a kind of revelation or revealing or a clarity around stories around that unaliving event. And as I talk about this now for you, just in case you didn't know, there's a, the head guy of intelligence, counter-terrorism intelligence, and just defected, resigned, put out a big letter. Now they're trying to shut him down. And one of the things he's been talking about in this like open letter to the president was how they weren't allowed to investigate the Kirk unaliving episode at all, which he found highly suspicious. So there is that. All right. So, and it's a big deal to have somebody at that level of power, a director of the head of the thing, the counterintelligence thing. I'm Canadian, guys, kind of stepped down in a big protest letter to the world of why he was leaving. And mostly he was leaving because there was no reason for this war that was ongoing with Iran. And he was getting out of Dodge. And just, this is very common. I used to hang out with intelligence people in my 30s because I lived near Fort Meade and DC. I was in that area as a Canadian, and one of my best friends and her husband were both intelligence, and they both told me about the WMDs that there was no reason to go to war against Iraq, right? They knew that they wanted to quit their job because of it. So I knew ahead of time. So I never believe what the government manufactures in any country for a reason for war. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is Monday. And so I'm going to spin the wheel for you. Okay. So what's going on Monday, March the 23rd. And on Monday, March the 23rd, we're going to notice that the moon will bend the nodes of fate. Now, the moon bending the nodes of fate is not a particularly big deal. It happens once a month. However, this moon is in Gemini down here. There's the moon down here in Gemini, and there's this north and south node. And this nodal bending is actually bending the north node. So something has to increase or be built or happen in the material realm of some significant crisis-oriented moment of time. It is particularly exact on Monday, and the moon is very sensitive to exactitude. So you could even say, look for stories around March the 23rd at 3 p.m. on Monday. Now, what I'm wondering about is that Lebanon is a Virgo rising country. So is Mexico. And so because of the south node and north node axis along the side of Lebanon's open enemies, that's where Mercury is, with Mars, the god of war, we might see some kind of story in the news cycle about the civilian population of southern Lebanon as a result of this. And it will be a difficult and unwelcome story. Now, there's a lot of things I could say. You could call it like casualties of war, or you could call it, anything. But it wouldn't surprise me if there's an event around this time. And Monday would be in the news cycle because Mercury is the news guy, and it may involve that country and that part of the world in general in our own lives. Just that one day, Monday, we could feel like there's some kind of pull towards something that is destined in our lives, connected to the Pisces part of our chart and the Gemini part of our whole sign house sky. It's just so flashpoint and fast moving, just how it feels on Monday, that I'm not going to delineate it much further. But you'll notice that the moon which was a new moon on March the 18th in Pisces, is no longer that. The moon, in terms of the distance from the sun, right here, is approximately 29 degrees. And so the moon is kind of coming into, just trying to lead into on Monday, the beginning phase of the waxing crescent moon. The waxing crescent moon, Monday, Tuesday in Gemini, can be an extremist moon. It can lead also to a push for some new light in the world. And lastly, and not leastly, this is the god of hygiene, health, and medical stuff, right here. And it's possible that we're going to get some kind of medical story involving somebody who is very actively participating in the Gemini Sagittarius axis of the sky. For example, there is the prime minister of the nation of Izzy. He has his ascendant at 9 degrees of Sagittarius, and the moon is bending his ascendant with a health indicator in the house of open enemies and adversaries. All right. So, I mean, if you think about it, if someone's going to get rid of him, they're going to likely use something that would be considered unhealthy to the body. All right. Not something, and with Gemini in the air, something unhealthy to the body in the air, right? Something he could touch with his hands, like a poison pen or something blowing in the air that could be toxic for his well-being. As that's kind of a big Monday, right, guys? Like, you can feel what I'm talking about. Now, you're going to notice something here. Where did it go? I'm on Wednesday. Tuesday. As we move into Tuesday, Volcano and Ceres and Pluto and Sun and Saturn are all very activated. Now, let's talk about this part of it first. This is going to be lingering all week long. Do you see that triangle where my cursor is going, right? That's week-long T-square energy. And it's Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius. And it's Ceres, the goddess of grain, harvest, agriculture, and things that have to do with land, arable land, and just land and soil. And it is going to be squaring Pluto, the god of death, decimation, and destruction. So destruction of some land, not so much apartment buildings. I mean, like, look at the property, look at the land, look at the soil, look at the ground. And Uranus is still on Algol, a star of great calamitous mass death, rotting corpses, bodies, etc. So therefore, if we're going to have any kind of weather event that involves shaking land, or if we're going to have anything upsetting us on the weather front to do with earthquakes, that might be something that is noted on Tuesday. And I don't know where in the world this is likely to happen. But because we also have volcano, like a volcanic eruption here, trans-Neptunian body, it is possible that this T-square, which keeps building all week long, is going to be very much about some explosive weather event. Or another option would be this asteroid, this trans-Neptunian is representative of Hephaestus, the armor of the gods, okay, the deformed husband of Venus, who was a blacksmith, so to speak, crafting magic items like the thunderbolts of Zeus and the girdle of Venus. So if you want to think about the guy who manufactures weapons of destruction, Volcano, and Pluto, right? Plutonium or death and destruction, and Ceres, land. And she's also like a Grim Reaper-esque. This is where I do get worried about a movement away from conventional warfare and a movement towards, the things that we're most terrified of somewhere in this conflagration. When we see this, we can see death of a leader every single month, because the sun will bump into Saturn all the way through to April of 2028. This is always going to be Sun Saturn. Compression, difficulty, challenges for an exalted sun leader connected to Saturn, the Lord of time, karma, Chronos, death, and all of that. And it could be something that we have to watch for on the regular, right? You can say, okay, look at this story that's building up. You'll start to feel it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Could there be some leader that goes into trouble? And the sun of Iran in the chart that I prefer is 11 degrees of Aries. It's not close enough, really, but it's close to probably another decapitation of some particular leader, maybe in that country. I hope not, because it's getting ridiculous. And because America, the asteroid transiting is with this explosive kinetic weaponer of the gods, armorer of the gods. This is definitely looking more very war story than, say, natural calamity, unless the earthquake is in the US. And for a long time, my prediction will stand. I had three dreams that it will be a massive North American Pacific Coast quake event sometime in our lifetimes, sometime probably before the end of this year. All right. So sooner than later, I don't know. Moving onward. Sorry to be so cheerful. No one's going to want to listen to their sign. I don't care. I'm just telling you what I see. As we move towards the weekend, there's one more thing to wonder about. And just ask ourselves what it could mean. Why is it happening? What do you want to do with it? We can notice that starting around Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Juno, the goddess of contractual vows and agreements, will be in a surprising positive flow to Uranus. However, Uranus on a very malefic star is also not necessarily great for the world, but you may see some kind of agreements regarding land in times of difficulty and war. And the sun of the nation of Izzy in the Middle East is around 23 degrees of Taurus. And this is its property, home, and homeland. And somebody might be getting ready to make an agreement, shake a hand around land. I can't really see that myself, but you never know. You never know. All righty. On March, or anywhere in the world, agreements regarding land. All right. The Strait of Hormuz over here, that's definitely a thing. That's why we have Mars, the god of war and water, Athena, military star, military victory, goddess of military victory in Rome, North Node amplification, intensity. There's the Vestal flame for fire, and we had the laundry fire on one of the United States military ships. It's literal as all F, guys. And Mercury's very confused, and he can deliver news that's not fit to print, that's very much deceptive or spin cycle or lying to us. But I will say that what the United States has tried to do is get the NATO nations to send support to keep the strait open for international oil trade. And now all the countries are saying yes after saying no. I don't know what that's about. I think this is what we're seeing here, is some kind of intensification of water war, water navigation, sea stuff, etc. Yes, that's what we see. Now, if we go forward to the weekend, and then we'll do your sign, take a look what I'm seeing here, guys. We're moving forward to the weekend and hitting Friday. And as we approach Friday, we're going to see how this is still here. It's heating up, the Grim Reaperess and the goddess of the land, and what happens when the land isn't growing anything, famines and stuff like that. She's building up a huge head of steam as she gets closer to her exact square to Pluto as we approach the weekend. And we see the moon on Friday amplifying volcanic eruption, explosive kinetic devices, weapons. So I don't like this particularly when it comes to world events and war and really shocking outcomes. And we finally get out of that part and we move into the weekend and we're finishing up. I noticed that Athena, the goddess of victory and war, and Mars hang out together on Saturday and Sunday. That will be, of course, the 28th and 29th of the month. She wants to procure successful victory in war, according to the Romans. She can be a war goddess. Mars has co-joined her at sea. There may be some announcements on the weekend, Friday through to Sunday, of a decisive military victory in a naval conflict. Because China has its moon here around 5 degrees of Aquarius and its ascendant, and you'll notice that the agreements and the contractual things are here. There may be stories going on as we approach the weekend, say even as Thursday to Sunday of this week ahead, with this explosive energy. It could involve also stories connected to China, who may or may not be getting involved in the situation in Iran, or also maybe taking advantage of the conflict abroad, where all the military for the United States is busy somewhere else, to begin to make moves towards the, maybe putting ships around Taiwan, right? Trying to strong arm Taiwan. Hope not, but yeah. Now we're going to talk about your sign. I wish I could say what a wonderful week it is. It's not really a wonderful week. There is a lot going on here that has to be looked at as basically tense energy. I think what I have for you today is I'm going to ask you to focus on things that were occurring in your life mid-August to the end of September. because that's where Mars will make a trigger point to that eclipse. So it's a deeper dive about the destiny, not the little daily, not the little daily ups and downs of our mood. I know some astrologers like to do moon astrology. And Monday you feel happy, on Tuesday you feel sad. No. I'd rather do something that's really going to be meaningful to you. And one of the things I think is meaningful is that we talk about the idea here of when Mars, who's a major trigger for eclipse points, when Mars is going to be triggering the eclipse point of September 2025, that happened on the 7th at 15 degrees of Pisces. And that's going to be a vibe for this whole week ahead. It comes in on, sure, you'll feel it on Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday kind of thing, right? It's already playing out as weekend comes through, but it's not about a day. It's about the next step you're taking in some area that you need to make sort of karmic and destined changes in to amplify or to push forward in some area of your life in a destined way that is relevant to your Pisces sky. So in today's rest of our video, we'll talk about your sign and that particular story. So let me open up the chart again. We'll spin the wheel. I do talk fast, but don't forget, you can slow me down. That's the good news. No need to listen at high speed. Hit the little gearbox icon and enjoy not having to listen to me in a very fast way. I might sound a little drunk, but otherwise you can still use it. Do not forget to please like and subscribe. You know how much that helps this channel. If you really like this kind of content where I pour my heart and soul into all signs content for you, so few astrologers do that on YouTube. For every single drop, there's usually a extra attention to your sign. If you like this kind of guidance, please subscribe, please hit the notification bell, please share with friends, and please comment. All of those small things are tremendously helpful for this channel and all channels on YouTube. Okay. And if you think you're subscribed, double check. YouTube dumped 2,000 subscribers off my channel in the last month. Yes, they did. So you might be one of them and you're not a bot, but they tell me that's what they're doing, but you're not a bot. I'm looking right now at the chart because I want to just make sure I cue us to Aries, and we're going to start on probably Tuesday. Make it simple, and we're going to start with Aries. Okay, let's get started. I've got Aries all ready to rock and roll. Here we have Aries, sun, moon, and rising. Sun sign, career and purpose. Moon sign, home and nest. Rising sign, essential game character in the simulation and very sensitive to life circumstance. Try all three, see where you land. This week ahead, it's kind of like you're starting out and you're coming off the weekend, like weekend hangover, we could call it. You felt some intense sort of grinding feeling that you're back in time, that you've gone back to the past, particularly mid-August, right, through to maybe the end of September, when you were feeling the acute energy, the intense energy of that eclipse in the sign of Pisces. Now, you could say as you go into this week ahead that you want to move forward in a destined and fated way regarding matters of your 12th house. What I like about the 12th house is extremely powerful placement for anyone who wants to cancel out an addiction. And because you may have thought like late August to the end of September of doing so, maybe you went dry October or sober October. I don't know if you did. Maybe something went on in your life where you knew you had a pattern or habit that really didn't work for your life, that you realized like, oh my God, who needs enemies when I'm my own worst enemy? These sorts of things are being looked at again for you. And as we enter the weekend into this week ahead, you're moving through that critical activation point of the eclipse of September the 7th. And it may even help to go back to September 7th on your calendar, a couple of days on either side, and look at what are some of the major things that happened, emails, phone calls, photos you took that day. It may be very specifically precise. Now, as Mars is actually doing this story and reactivating that eclipse, right? He's also attended to by the Vestal flame of sacred devotion, which means you want to find a real spiritual fire in your belly for what it is that you're trying to amplify in the 12th house. For some of you, it can be a spiritual practice. You might really see that morning meditations, evening contemplations, lighting candles, chanting mantras, yoga is a spiritual practice, is calling you, not just for the exercise of its yoga, for the discipline and the spiritual stillness. So a lot of you could be coming back to more of a spiritual practice. I remember in September, because I'm an Aries sun and moon, that I started listening to Eckhart Tolle and doing morning meditations with lit candles. And so you might feel a reboot, a call back to this place that you have investigated and are still hoping to investigate from that eclipse that occurred back in September. And it's going to be the last Pisces eclipse, because you're done with it now, right? These eclipses in Pisces are finito. You're not going to get them again for another 18 years. I would add to that Jupiter is ruling Mars at the eclipse activation point, and Jupiter is ruling that Mars, and there's a trine between Mars and Jupiter that's going to be felt on the weekend. And it means there's an auspicious energy, a positive energy as Mars triggers the eclipse point of September 7th. They could spin out positive things to do with your home and private life, right? The midnight hour. And that's what I mean. What are you doing in your solitude, alone time? And how does it connect to your private home life as well? And Jupiter said, also, you could prosper from this eclipse. This is activating the idea that you want to have prosperity from things you do in and around your home, in your domicile. And it can connect to digital income, borderless revenue, and far off places. And go back to September, and what was going on with your digital income then. I remember I had a nice little pop in my YouTube channel then, where I suddenly had an increase of subscribers and a nice pop. It was my highest month of YouTube revenue in September. Seriously, I'm going to open a window. Give me a second. So if September, my ad revenue on YouTube popped, then I could maybe say, will it pop again? So I'm try to compare notes, guys. Go back in time and compare cycle, repetition, and pattern recognition. Taurus, sun, moon, and rising sign. The sky is telling us about windfalls and pennies from heaven, but this is Mars, so he's a little bit of a challenger. Your 11th house, it has a lot to do with things that may connect you strongly to long-range goals, wish fulfillment, long-range plans and dreams, but also earnings, money, resources, and gains from your career. That eclipse is being reactivated as this weekend behind us. Throughout the rest of this week, Mars has hit the trigger point for that eclipse. It's asking you to go back to September in particular, like mid-August to the end of September, when you might have noticed some major turning points going on, destined and fated, connected to your career, earnings, gains, and resources. You might have gotten a raise, a promotion. My Taurus rising daughter got Employee of the Year award and New Employee of the Year award. So there's those kinds of awards and rewards. This is the awards and rewards of the career that you might have experienced back in September. And you're going to now reactivate that energy. Mars is turning it on again as he goes right over the eclipse energy of 2025 and September 7th. You might also feel, because of the flow from Lord Jupiter, exalted, domicile of Jupiter, the Lord of the house of Jupiter is Pisces, not Neptune. This flow here, as this trigger point happens and unfolds throughout this week, also offers up some very positive stories when it comes to matters to do with your local environment. So the clubs, the grocery store, the library, the gas stations, all the stuff in your local neighborhood and area, and some positive growth expansion energies are activated here. Now, that eclipse that triggered some of this back in September, it did run through for 6 months. And some of you might have even relocated your home, for example, to a new area in your town or your city. This offers up another little boost of something good. And it can be quite simple, but you could also be more profitable in the third house, especially if you're someone who does marketing and selling, writing and communicating, or teaching. And then funny enough, my daughter does more or less works in a corporate office job, and she's kind of in charge of stuff to do with selling. Okay. She doesn't sell, but she's a part of this, the administrative apparatus for what is being sold and installed. So you might find things going on there that could be like a nice boost for the gains of your career, a nice uplift in your career success itself. Gemini, sun, moon, and rising sign. I don't mind this for me too. I have a progressed Gemini sun. Your sun sign is not as accurate. Your progressed planets are not as important as your natal planets, but they do count. So another layer of icing on the cake of your life, right? Icing is the progressions. Now, back in September, on the 7th, we had the eclipse at 15 degrees of Pisces. Starting on the weekend, as we move through the 21st, 22nd, but you come into this week ahead, it dominates the week as a reverb vibe from the eclipse that occurred then, as Mars will have crossed over the 15-degree mark and be almost 16 degrees that eclipse and really reignite it. Now, what was going on for you in mid-August, particularly to the end of September, where you noticed some major activation of expansion and growth and worldly success in your career space and public reputation. My progressed Gemini sun, for example, I got to appear on somebody's show. It was either Dan Waits or the other show that I appeared on then, sort of like one of those like near death shows or something, but I was on somebody's show, and it gave me a huge boost in my new subscribers, my views, and also my income. So again, I told that story for another part of my chart, but for my progressed sun, that happened too. So there was a nice little bump or a nice little boost in the sky regarding career success and career gains and amplitude. Expect that to return, but now we have the Vestal flame here, and there might be a part of this that says you've got a fire here, like a sacred duty. You feel called to whatever this is. You didn't feel that call in September, but now you do. Now something's lifting here, like a calling or a call, and you feel like this is something you absolutely want to do. You are devoted to your success all of a sudden, and it will unfold a vibe all through this week that reminds you of the importance of being really into what you're doing. I do not mind the fact that Athena is here and Mercury as well. So there could be some interesting developments regarding things that you need to speak, communicate, or say into the world. And Athena can also be about knowledge and wisdom. This is good for your career. It's like an extension of the eclipse energy that tried to bump you up, that lunar eclipse back in the fall. Now, don't forget, a lunar eclipse can also ask you to close up a chapter in your career, but this is going to activate what opens and what closes. And there are going to be some things that you want to close down, and there's going to be other career objectives that you want to increase. You're retired. Your 10th house can represent just how the world sees you, and it can represent how the world sees your actions as a retired person. We all have retirement, I guess, but you don't just hide out in your closet, right? So how are you perceived in the world, and where do you feel this is an extension of you that you would call accomplishments? And there's going to be a bump, and it's going to tie you back to September. Jupiter is supporting you on the financial front from your second house as this weekend into this week goes through. It's more than just about this week. It's about destiny, fated increase in earnings, money, and resources as you have amplitude, renewal, and maybe some slight changes of direction in your career that are going to be highly profitable. So keep that in mind. You might even be looking for quitting a job, starting a new job, or changing a professional direction, but Jupiter isn't guaranteeing you some income success off of this story. Hey, Cancer, sun, moon, and rising sign. This sky is okay for you if you are looking to move into a more meaningful, purposeful sense of life. And why I say that is because there was an eclipse on September hang on, I need to close the door now. It's cold. I'm not having a hot flash, Cancer. It's because I get heat from my units below me, and I have no heat on in my unit, and it doesn't matter. And a ring light that's beaming light at me. Okay, so back to you. So you see this idea germinating for you, particularly through last year into this year, where you want to find life's purpose and meaning as a priority. Like, you don't want to just be like, doing the thing without a sense of being aligned with your dharma. And you're very picky. You might have found yourself letting go of particular paths of professional success or career ambition and closing some things down last year, 2025, spring and fall. But the fall eclipse in 2025 at 15 degrees on September the 7th, 15 degrees of Pisces, Mars reactivates that this weekend into this whole week ahead, the weekend behind into this whole week ahead. And he's asking you to think about what it is you actually want to do, right? To increase your destined success, because you're devoted to this direction. You're tending a flame. It feels right for you. Mercury is amplitude with the North Node. And it also tells us with Jupiter's support structure that it benefits you in terms of health, prosperity, wellness, faith, hope, and optimism. You're just very lucky. And you might have if you go back to September, you would go mid-August to the end of September and ask yourself what career alignment choices and changes you were thinking of making, or purpose alignment. Now, some of you, it could also involve matters to do with winning in court, going to university, getting a book publishing deal, world travel opportunities emerging this week. But it all goes back to an eclipse. It's deeper than just the actual story of what this week looks like. You're going to reimagine something that connected to what you were dealing with last September. especially on the 7th or so, a day or two on either side, 3 days on either side. Look at your day timer, look at your calendar, look at your photo, go sleuth your life. What were you dealing with particularly acutely on that eclipse? Okay, poor Charlie Kirk on September 10th, 3 days afterwards, he lost his head. You need to literally look around that time because this is important to you. This is the alignment of your life's mission and having a place of significance in your life. And Mars up here, as he triggers this, he's the ruler of your 5th house of your natural gifts and talents. Don't forget, if you're not using those natural talents and gifts that you were born to express, you're going to miss the mark for being on planet Earth. And this is what this message is showing you. And so if you know you're doing the thing that you're good at and you're starting to move in that direction, great. If you don't, this is going to push you further this week ahead on that direction. All right, Leo, sun, moon, and rising sign. The sky tells us that you're going through a kind of deeper, darker investigation of your psyche, your soul, because it's 8th house, it's moksha, liberation, and also connecting you to like the archetypes of your psychology, and some of those shame, abandonment, betrayal wounds that we all have are sometimes tucked in the 8th house. So if you go psycho-spiritual there and you think about the eclipse that we had September the 7th, then it's quite feasible that you're having some amplification of matters connected to that eclipse. And so go back to mid-August to the end of September, focus on 3 days before and after September 7th and what was going on in that deeper space for you, especially because Jupiter then and now is in your 12th house of spiritual liberation as well. Now, on another note, it's a money house. It's your resources, your finances, connected very broadly to chunks of money that you don't earn particularly. Inheritances, share spousal resources, money from an investment, insurance payout, tax refunds, whatever. Money that just, here's a chunk of money, shareholding, dividends. So this kind of money, or money that makes money, these kinds of themes were really active for you probably in September. And you want to increase your nodal access. You want to increase your success here. And all of a sudden, this week ahead brings that into another turning point. Mars is a trigger. And I'm wondering, Mars also rules land, property, and real estate. And you may be coming into some issues here connected to refinancing mortgages and loans, property and land deals, but also with Jupiter, involvement from backroom deals and negotiations flowing to the Mars story, or things to do with investments from foreign places, land and property in foreign lands, and decisions you might want to make around that. Certainly, if you're going through a divorce or settlement or thinking of separating back in the fall, August, September, and go back to the 7th to look like what kinds of things actually happened there. This is the next iteration. This is taking action on moving away from each other, including who lives where, who gets the house, who gets the dog, who gets the cat, who gets the sofa. You're going to have this momentum in this week ahead, starting on the 21st, just before this week began. And through the rest of this week, you'll feel like this mojo momentum about this. Especially with the vessel flame in the 8th house, if you're separating assets, it's really about separating the hearth and home and the matters of who and who gets what, including the pets. Mars exalts your house of pets. Virgo, sun, moon, and rising sign. You guys have this reactivation of the eclipse that occurred on September the 7th. This is going to tell you about a fated and destined element of your story where you want to increase or move towards something. And it is in your 7th house, which is your long-term committed relationships in love, in business partnerships, legal contracts, but also if you serve an audience or marketplace, because this is the 10th house from the 10th, those people are there as well. It's all those other people in your life. Now, Virgo, it could be your partner's story. If you go back and ask your partner if you're married or with someone, significant partner, what was going on for us? Honey, what were you doing September, like around the 7th, 3 days before and after? And see if, like the month of September for your significant other, like mid-August to the end of September, there was major changes that wanted to blossom in their lives during that 15-degree Pisces eclipse. And now that story is back for a round 2. And Mars is about change, decisions, cutting, severing, but flowing to Jupiter in the house of great career gains, also connecting your partner to good fortune. So there may be some major changes in the life of a partner that they consider fortunate, but they're spinning it off of the September event. On the other hand, just be careful because there is Mars in your 7th house of marriage, and this could involve a activation of disagreement between you and a significant other based on things that were also pumped up for you as a couple back in September. And so you want to watch for problems that look like blowouts, arguments, and big disagreements. But because Jupiter is flowing to the Mars story, it's probably all going to work out. One of the disagreements from your partner's perspective could be around children. All right. Or sex and children from your partner's perspective. We're not getting enough sex, or our children are annoying me, or whatever. Or, those are themes your partner might consider germane, and you're having this intense discussion. Mars is with Mercury, right? And look for that this week ahead. The bigger story is it's a destined, fated redirection of your committed long-term love story that was trying to already show you its path in September. And indeed, last March or spring of 2025, we had eclipses there too. You are probably North Node moving in together, buying a home together, getting married, getting engaged. If you're with someone it wants to up level, but it can also just mean massive destined change. And if you're in the wrong relationship, a lot of you have been like feeling the rumblings of separation. It's going to go one way or the other with the North Node there. It's going to go up and get better, or go down and get worse. Hey, Libra, sun, moon, and rising sign. The sky tells us that you've got this destined, fated turning point that is available to you in this week ahead, connected to Mars reactivating September 7th eclipse. So destined, fated, decision and turning points energy. Mars is in the house of your work, the job. You hang out there. It's employee central, right? It's your desk and office space. Now, if you go back to September 7th, and you look around 2 or 3 days before and after, and if you also consider like maybe mid-August to the end of September, the total lunar eclipse, I think it was total, the lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Pisces is being reactivated. And this week you start to feel, weekend behind us throughout this week, there's something that's got to give. I think because of the trine to Jupiter in the 10th house, because Mars owns your money house, you're probably looking at a story that tells you about you want to increase your money or earnings, or make some changes in how you make money, connected to opportunities, golden opportunities, exalted opportunities professionally. I mean, this could take you to a whole new level. They may want to, make you the director or lift you up. If you're not employed by others, then you're just getting a nice boost of public, popular expansion, growth, and prosperity that could also show up in your pocketbook or wallet. You may make some major changes in your health protocols and dietary habits this week ahead, but that's been trying to happen for a long time. That started last year. And in the month of September, there was a real call in your 6th house to improve your health. And Mars, ruler of your 2nd house, is giving you clues in this next week that what you're eating, drinking, or whatever sticking in your nose or mouth is probably not the good thing for you. You must give it up, and you probably will. South Node amplitude energy in the 12th house of self-undoing is a great cleansing, clearing, and dietary redistribution time for you. Now, very few of you might have some difficulties this week ahead with a pet. Mars can bring health challenges to an animal in your life. So that's one of the more difficult stories. But otherwise, I think that this is going to be, going back to that eclipse in September, a real catalyst for professional advancement for you. Scorpio, am I talking too quickly, guys? To slow me down. Scorpio, sun, moon, and rising sign. The 5 here is pretty damn good because it's a house of good fortune. Now, we have eclipses in these houses every 18 years, and you've been eclipsing through the 5th house in earnest, right? Spring of 25, spring of 20, fall of 25. And it's a September eclipse at 15 degrees of Pisces lunar that is being reactivated by Mars. Started on the weekend, 21st, 22nd, goes all the way through to the 29th. You'll feel this like, okay, step 2, what do we do next? In the house of fertility and pregnancy and children. My Scorpio rising kid, right, got pregnant in October from the eclipse in September. Right. So there's just more momentum in that direction. Now, it's probably just the next step, like buying, a stroller for the kid. But there's also more than fertility and children and parenting in this part of the sky. There's also entrepreneurial endeavors and artistic expression and creativity and passion for the muse. And as Mars is activating this part of your sky, look back to September about your passion projects, your art, your creative endeavors, your entrepreneurial stories, because there's a second iteration and Mars is, really activating that older trigger point and taking it to another level. The Vestal flame of hearth and home is where you devote yourself to the muse, to your talents and gifts, to your entrepreneurial entrepreneurial endeavors and to your children. And if you're single, this is romantic love. And maybe something kicked off last September, look, particularly 3 days before and after the 7th. And maybe it didn't really show up fully yet. And this could be the beginning of or the turning point energy regarding a relationship. Right? A new story. I mean, it's funny because Mars rules your 6th house where Venus is, and that's often a preamble to dating. I would suggest if you start seeing somebody now, this person could become committed as soon as Venus enters in the month of April, your 7th house. I think it's April 9th. Memory serves me, but somewhere around there, somewhere in April. Maybe it's earlier. No, it's going to be the last day of March. And then also, it could be somebody much younger or much older than you as well. That's what Saturn tells me. So singletons looking for love and felt a germinating force for wanting to be in a romantic love affair last September. If it didn't germinate then, it's going to be kicked into gear now. Good fortune is good fortune. You can't undo good fortune. And Jupiter's flowing to the house of good fortune from your 9th house of luck. One of the luckiest houses, the 9th house and the 5th house, are both flowing support from Lord Jupiter. You could get some beautiful opportunities for romantic love in foreign lands with foreign people. You might get some golden opportunities for entrepreneurial endeavors involving publishing, international success, and you might get some openings here regarding lucky breaks when it comes to legal and court affairs that you feel like it's good fortune for you the way the judge has decreed the outcome for you. And all said and done, it's just a very fortunate Mars activation of the eclipse point. Sagittarius, sun, moon, and rising. So Saggies, it looks to me like you got a story going on. It's a beautiful change of home of some kind, or some major changes in with whom you live with in the home. And that's going to happen because you've been eclipsing in your 4th house for a long time. I mean, it was eclipse in the fall of 24. There was a solar eclipse, I think, if I remember correctly, spring. Maybe there wasn't one then. Can't remember. Yeah, I think there was. And then there's an eclipse in the fall of September of 2025, September the 7th. All right. So beware the Ides of September the 7th. But what happened in September, like mid-August to the end of September into early October, regarding matters of property, land, home, real estate, parents, mother in particular, legacy wealth, property, land, and money that belong to your family. Those are stories of the 4th house or somebody you live with. And there can be, with this Mars energy, a next story, the last stage of this. North Node is amplifying fated, destined change connected to homeland, property, real estate, and domicile. And we see a Vestal flame, which is the kitchen or the hearth fire or the fireplace. So there's a change of hearth and home that wants to emerge. You've started to feel this building up as the weekend occurred behind us, and it continues to elbow you all through this next week. It can look like a change of home because you're moving. Someone's moving out of the home, right? So it's not just you. Maybe it's who lives in the home is changing. Because Jupiter's in the 8th house, there can be real estate, property, land, financing, purchase, sale, or events going on here during this week that's destined because you thought in September, like mid-August to the end of September, or even into early October, I got to move. And this is going to propel action so that you can take that effort and move. And Jupiter also can be shared financial monies with your in-laws or your spouse. And there's money and property and land and real estate narratives going on here because Mars is squaring your 7th house and Mercury's there who rules your marriage house. It can also look like division of assets in a separation agreement or the end of a relationship. There's that possibility here that you've been planning this or thinking about it since the fall, since September. And now you're going to begin to execute your decisions and actions with a visible Mars in this part of your chart. Because Mars rose here on St. Patrick's Day, you're going to move anyway in the next 2 years. No matter what, the next 2 years, you're moving somewhere. You're going somewhere. Mars is expat signature. North Node is the foreigner energy. Some of you are thinking of moving to another country. And you may not do the move this week, but you may begin to engineer the action plan, the decisions to move your home to another land and a far off place. Mars is the ruler of the distant shores and far off lands and the foreign places of the 12th house. So it really doubles down on the possibility of the beginning of a move here and planning, executing, and strategizing that move as well. Hey, Capricorn, sun, moon, and rising sign. What about you? Well, Mars is going to activate the eclipse point, and he's your exaltation lord. So he's got a special relationship with you. And he's reminding you of what was going on in your life in August, mid-August to maybe the end of September. It could involve a change of location, involving a change of home to another city, another town, another area, not exotic and foreign, just different, and the third house is like when you go somewhere there, it's going to be somewhat like domestic, feels familiar, like, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh my God, this is an exotic destination. So you could have done that already. You might, as a Capricorn, have also just traveled a bit during that time. And that eclipse that happened on September the 7th at 15 degrees of Pisces on the 7th of September, lunar, it's a moon, right? It wants to rehome you to some new home. And there was an eclipse there in the fall of 24, but it wasn't with the node of fate. And so it was complicated. This is a pure eclipse that happened in the fall. And this Mars activation of the eclipse point on the weekend behind you throughout the rest of this week ahead of you is likely going to ask you about either decisions regarding travel or decisions around location and relocation and home. And you may find yourself looking at that through the lens of fireplace, right? The Vestal flame is here. Where do you want to tend the sacred hearth? What is the area you want to live in? It's not so much about the home, like I'm going to move to the home 2 doors down. It's what neighborhood, what environment, what local milieu are you going to want to live in, right? Now there's water down here, so a lot of you are going to look for places that involve water, seas, oceans, whatever, or some water at hand, even if it's just a waterfall. You're in a water sign down here. The Jupiter is very supportive from the 7th house of business partnerships and long-term committed love relationship. Jupiter is like an ally flowing to Mars as he pivots this week and asks you to look at fated turning points and destinations to do with travel or relocation of home. And because Mars also is the ruler of your 11th house of friendships and also career gains and windfalls, and you have Uranus in the house of good fortune, which you win money in that place, it's possible, not probable, it's possible that this could be a turning point for financial gain that feels like a windfall that then allows for some of these move decisions, travel decisions to be executed. But all said and done, look for how you feel. Like go back to September 7th, particularly 3 days before and 3 days after. What was happening then? If you could find, old notes, phone photos, time-stamped, emails, phone calls on your log. Somehow, if you do a forensic investigation, you might see similar trends there that you were thinking about travel or move or where you want to position yourself. If you work at all in like social media or you have writing projects to figure out, this is very positive and can bring you great fortune and even financial gain by pursuing your communications, marketing, writing, and selling endeavors with passion. Mercury is very mystical and he can write here, but very eloquent, poetic, more Rumi-esque writing, not like a how-to manual. But it could stir the muse a bit here as well, because Athena, the goddess of authorship, is here. So for any Capricorns who always wanted to pen a book that inspires people, this could be a turning point. And maybe you thought of doing that back in September, but now you feel like a momentum towards moving forward on a destined writing project. Mercury rules your publishing house. So I say, yes, this is a week to plant that seed, take that action and move in that direction. All right, Aquarius, sun, moon, and rising sign. Well, let's talk about the fact that we have an eclipse cycle that began in the fall of 2024, but really picked up speed in the spring of 2025 when the North Node of Fate actually went into your 2nd house of earnings, money, and resources and dietary habits and styles, because it's what you put in your mouth and nose. And the North Node is amplitude and volume up and worldly success at a cost, right? Don't sell your soul for chasing that paper. I've learned that one. I'm Aquarius. I'm one of you. And as this intensity is ongoing and has been, on September the 7th, you had amplitude in earnings. You had a destined fated eclipse. It could have been felt by you mid-August to the end of September. I told you that was my highest grossing month in 2025 on my ad revenue on YouTube. And that's exactly what that was. It was an amplitude up of my money. Look for things that are occurring now on this week ahead, starts on the weekend, continually unfolds over the next week or so, where you now feel this new momentum around finances because you're making decisions and taking actions. Mars, some of them might cut, end, and sever certain earnings earnings resources, but you'll add something new because you're a very strong, demanding, passionate self-starter when it comes to making money at this point. And you notice that you also have Mercury here, the information news guy, but he's mercantile, marketing, selling, buying, trading, whatever. This could really open up opportunities for you to begin to make money by selling things, even furniture, by the way. I have to sell some furniture for my move, selling possessions, eliminating possessions from your life, all your I haves, paring it down. And you might actually make a lot of money by selling stuff. And because I'm moving in a couple months, I will be doing that. You'll be driven to sell away, but more deeply than that, your voice, vocation, and calling, and Mars is a ruler of your 10th house of career, are on the line. And Jupiter supporting from the house of employees, employer relationships, the house of your 6th house of work, the daily work and the job and the workplace and the office space, right? And so there's something that wants to change, right? The material prosperity, the career, and Jupiter expanding, exalted your employees, for example, or prosperity from your work and your work habits and your daily work routines and, the way you operate your work itself. So I've up leveled to a new camera that I have to now get a memory card for. So I have higher production value. So that's just an example of a new possession that amplitudes up my career. And I just got it in the mail a couple of days ago. I haven't used it yet because I had to go get a memory card. Didn't know I needed that. That's what I got for you. And if you track back to September 7th and you look at a day before, 3 days before and after, very specific tight window around that eclipse, and look at what you were thinking, doing, going on, what was happening then, look at your emails. This is another phase of that. This is taking it further. You want to be very strategic because Athena, the goddess of strategy and victory, is here in war. You have a strategic way of figuring out your money story, but you need a devotional flame. You want to feel the deeper passion for why and how the money is being made in your life. Without the devotional flame, you're not into it. So funny, I came up with a new idea. I'm going to create a second channel. I've got the name for it. And I'm going to interview people who've had spiritual awakenings. It's going to be my joy hobby. What do you call it? My guilty pleasure channel. And I feel inspired and excited to do that. I don't even care if anyone watches. It's like a hobby channel, and that came up here. I'm recording this just as Mars is coming into the eclipse point of September 7th. So see how that feels for you this week ahead. You certainly look like you're rolling in the dough or increasing your money and making decisions that are strategic to further that increase and career success. All right, Pisces, sun, moon, and rising sign. I like this story because you have been under a lot of intense eclipse energy starting in the fall of 2024. It was September 18th with the first Pisces eclipse, but the node was in your money house and house of your teeth and face. Go back. I bet you some of you had some dental work done after September in the 6 months that followed of 24, but also you were beginning to gear up for changes in your money-making endeavors, professionally, probably. Well, at the same time, you were growing a larger version of you. You're moving into amplitude, volume up, and destiny of your own self in this lifetime. The note of fate is your steering wheel free ride. And this is where you are a passenger on your own destined stories that you chose before you were born. And so as this North Node amplitude increase energy has been with you in earnest since January 11th of 2025, when the node backed into your sign and leaves, by the way, at the end of July, you're going to feel this last energy of the September 7th, 15-degree lunar eclipse. You're going to feel that energy activated this week ahead. It started to feel activated probably like Friday behind us through to the end of this week. It's ongoing. And your executive strategic way of making a decision and taking an action with passion and ardor and boldness, but yes, with that supple flexibility of the Pisces nature, is allowing for you to take something that was seeded last September and now begin to really activate it fully. So if you think about like the middle of August to the end of September with, focal point September 7th, what was going on for you? It may have involved choices around earnings. It may have involved Mars's rulership of your 9th house of Dharma, moving into a path that's true and purposeful for you. It may also involve, with Jupiter's support this time around, a movement toward great success. in a creative, artistic, or entrepreneurial path. This can also bring you news of the birth of a grandchild, the conception of a grandchild, or an increase of family, more children in your family. And you'll notice that this week ahead opens up the possibility that you might be thinking of what your devotion is about. Are you devoted to a person, a place, or a thing? Is it a spouse that you need to devote more attention to? Mercury, the ruler of your spouse, is in your sign. Have you neglected some loving devotion to your partner? That's a possibility. So can you spend a little energy there? Because whatever this is taking you a step further. You have been under marital duress, or your partner has been ill, probably, on and off since the fall of 2024. And this last eclipse in September of 25 is either the bell ringer for an end or a renewal in the relationship. And it doesn't have to renew. If it ends, it's just as fine, right? South node through the marriage house. However, if it's a relationship that you want to tend a sacred duty to and a flame of devotion, then you pay attention to what the signals are this week about how you can, how you can focus a little more passionately on your significant other and what do they need from you. A lot of TLC goes a long way here, especially tender, loving words. On the other hand, be careful because, Mars and Mercury together are like harsh speech as well. And Athena's lawyer, and that means I want a divorce. I'm out of here. It's that vibe. So it's something like that could emerge and will take you back to September. Like, for example, September, you thought, I'm out of this relationship. I can't take it anymore. I got to quit. But you didn't, right? You're still here. Now you got this like axe in your hand and some strong flowing words in a Pisces way. Nonviolent communication that you're done in a relationship. But, a nodal axis in the house self and other doesn't have to end a relationship. It really depends on your natal chart. It wants to change the nature of the dynamic between you and a significant relationship partner. End of story. All right. That's what we got. That's what I got for you. Let me know how that thing goes. And you're on your A game. Mercury rules property, home, and real estate, and he's there with Mars. So things you do in and from the home, you want to tend a sacred flame, have a hearth, have a candle, have a place of repose, find your little holy altar in the home, do things in the home that are soul satisfying as well. And like you're nurturing yourself in the home. Something about this eclipse can open up that possibility as well. I mean, certainly this eclipse this eclipse trigger point could change your home over the next while. And major decisions may be made about not just changing your home, but maybe changing where you operate in your home, moving to a separate bedroom. Developing a new office space in the home. Something like that could happen here as well. All righty. That's what I've got. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I usually have a members only extension, but I don't think I'm always going to have one. And this is a week that I don't have one. But what I will say for you this week ahead is a little bit of an outro. I like to talk about where the universe gets mystical and magical and opens up spiritual stories, right? And sometimes I don't know if I told you a story or not. I can't remember if I told you the story, but I'm going to tell you a story. This one's, I don't have a recent like aha or anything particularly awesome to tell you, but what I'm going to tell you is one of my old timey stories. It takes me back to a younger age. And one of the things that you might really inspire you, why I want to tell you this story in the outro is I want to tell you because this is an energy of Pisces, right? This is where the eclipse happened on September the 7th. This is where you are feeling this beautiful, transcendent, mystical quality to the sky with the flame of sacred devotion. There's purity and innocence and that sort of mysticism and that deep oceanic awareness that we can have, unity consciousness where the wave and the ocean, the true self is the depth below the ocean surface. And so anything to do with mysticism, spiritual but not religious, I would say. I mean, Pisces can be religious when you get Neptune in there, right? That's the holy war stuff with Saturn. But it can also be that true Rumi and Hafiz poetry and that mystical, magical, deep awareness. Here's a story. So I was raised agnostic or whatever. My parents didn't have a religion. So they were Protestant, but they didn't attend church. And then I was born out of wedlock. And my dad said, well, we'll get her baptized at I think it was called the Trinity Church, but it's like Methodist, it's like a nothing kind of religion. I mean, what, not nothing, sorry, Methodist, but you know what I mean? It's just like, it's a hodgepodge religion. Anglican meets Methodist meets Lutheran, something like that. Anyway, they said no because I was born out of wedlock or something. They wouldn't baptize me because my parents weren't baptized. It was a big deal. My parents were just doing it out of a ceremonial thing because I was, my mom got pregnant with me and had me before she got married and then married my dad. So what's so funny about that is that led my parents to take a hiatus from church at all. They never really went. And although I got sent to Sunday school with my sisters at one point, maybe when I was 8 or 9, we were bored stiff and we were totally not into it. My sisters and I just didn't jive with Sunday school. That doesn't mean that I didn't have a fascination with religion. And what happened was, and mysticism, I was in grade 9 or 10, not 9 or 10. I was 9 or 10 years old, whatever that is, whatever grade that is, grade 3 or 4, grade 4 maybe, or grade 5. Anyway, I was really young. I was 9 or 10 years old. And my teacher was a preacher. He actually went on, quit teaching, lovely guy, Mr. Pratt. And he literally started off, we had a lot of male teachers in our school, and none of them were pedophiles that I know of, but Mr. Gregory is a little bit dicey. He's the guy you had to watch out for, but he never made any moves on me. But when I had all male teachers when I was like in grade 5, 6, 7, and 8. They were great influences on my life. And what happened with Mr. Reed is that he was a Bible thumper. Like, he believed in God. He believed in Jesus. He was like, praise the Lord. He'd been converted or something. And he would read Bible stories to us. Like, who could do that today? You're not supposed to mix your religion with your teachings, but he did. He was a great teacher. He inspired my love of writing. That's how I became a writer. He was the guy. And I ended up loving his stories, loving the stories of, Jesus healing the sick and curing the lepers and walking on the water and multiplying the loaves, and then Moses parting the Red Sea. And I'm going through an entire school year of indoctrination. But what I'm getting from it is magical. I'm like, the universe is magical. It's pure magic. It made me think I could believe and make it happen, and that there's higher powers and things that are unordinary, like walking on water, can happen. And so it just seeped into me like all school year. At the end of the school year, we had a big trip planned to go to this zoo locally. And it was like a wildlife park, right? And we had to drive like maybe 35, 40 minutes to get there. And then we go, I remember the wildlife park, there were giraffes and everything. You'd wander around, look at them behind the fence, not in cages. And I was so looking forward to that trip. Like, I was geeked out on that trip. I wanted to go so badly. I don't know why it mattered to me. I have no understanding of why that was so important to me, but I was really looking forward to it. And the day that the trip arrived, and this is the end of the school year, which ended in June. So this is probably early June. It was the last week of school. The morning arrived of the trip, and we had torrential rain. I mean, rain that you don't see, guys, anymore. Like, it's like, wow, thunder, lightning, rain, and just nonstop rain. It was kind of monsoon-like, actually. In Northern Ontario, we don't have monsoon storms in June, but we had that. And it looked like the forecast said, my teacher said, oh, it looks like the trip's canceled today. The morning trip was canceled for another class. Our trip will be canceled. Sorry, everybody. But the weather forecast says nonstop rain all day, and wasn't done the kind of rain you could go out to the park and wander around with the animals and do the thing. Anyway, I went home for lunch. I walked home for lunch because my school was close to my home. And I took into consideration that when God does miracles in the Bible, they seem to work and people can ask God for help. And so, no religion here. I go off to the living room when my mother's making my chicken noodle soup from Campbell's or whatever she's concocting in the kitchen for my lunch. And I get down on my knees and I go up. I still remember, the sofa I used with the little gold sofa in the corner of the living room. And I'm like, dear God, please make the rain stop and bring the sun so that we can go on this field trip today. Thank you. Thank you. Amen. And I got up. And as I get up and I walk into the kitchen, my mother says to me, not knowing what I was doing in the living room, but she says, oh my God, Lori, I just saw a flash of blue sky through the kitchen window. I think it's going to clear up. And I'm like, really, Mom? She's, yeah. And it was still raining, for God's sakes. And she saw this flash of the clouds parted and the blue sky was in her visual field right after I prayed. And then I couldn't believe it. My 45 to 1 hour lunch hour, by the time I went back to school, it was blazing blue sky day, beating down with the sun. And it was like hot. It was like a hot day. My ice cream cone melted, and I think I lost the top of my three-decker ice cream at the park, at the wildlife park. And it was like probably 85 degrees or 90 degrees and hot and sunny, and it was a great trip. And then for the rest of my life, I believed anything is possible. So I still thank Mr. Pratt for telling me all those stories of magic. He just focused on the stories. He didn't add dogma. He didn't tell us we had to be saved. He just gave me stories about miracles and I believed them. Okay, so that's a fun story. I don't know why I told that story. It just came to mind. Maybe you have enchantment stories from your childhood where something that you prayed for happened or you had a mystical encounter with the divine. But don't forget, this is a Pisces turning point Mars with the Vestal flame of devotion. Mercury is there. The North Node is there. So invite the mystical, the enchantment into your life this week ahead. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.
Lunatic astrology.